one of the things people will say is like, oh, if you're looking to practice, just contribute to open source. And I think there's maybe misrepresentation there of how easy that is to just do.
Yes.
Okay, well, is it going to take 5 minutes, 5 hours,
Yeah.
5 days, 5 weeks? Yeah, you had picked out a couple projects, and I started looking. The one thing, like obviously, if you come into here, so this is the Jekyll project, and if you just look at the issues, there's tons of issues here. There's 94 open issues. There's 72 pull requests. So there's a lot of stuff that's kind of happening on here. And I think it could be pretty difficult to just jump into any of these. I mean,
yeah.
Obviously, projects that are more mature have better processes, and like there's labels on some of these. And when we look at the particular issue we pulled up, you can see that this is definitely like a pretty well-oiled machine in terms of they've got lots of people sort of monitoring things, and there's bots that are commenting on things that are stale or not ready. But so there's kind of a trade-off there, and like smaller projects probably have less of that structure set up, but it's maybe easier to get a response, get a contribution made, maybe easier to understand versus bigger projects. Generally, like a little harder to find your footholds, but they can be a little bit more friendly in terms of the instructions.
Right, because it sounds like, would this be a fair characteristic, like the trade-off that's being made is a little more infrastructure and a little bit more like context building of like process, but then once you wrap your head around that, then there's a little bit of like a golden path for moving something through.
Yeah, it's a little bit tough to just kind of look through this and be like, all right, I guess I'll just like pick one, and if it's buried deep in the guts of it, it suddenly just becomes more of a big project than like, oh, I've got like 2 hours after work, I'm gonna like contribute.
Right. Yeah, and that's similar understanding from my point of view. I've never made an issue or PR to Jekyll, but I use it for a couple of different projects, and Jekyll's kind of everywhere in the static site space.
Yeah, so like when I just see these 94 open things, I noticed that they have all these labels. So I went to these labels section here, and this just shows you what all the labels are, and then on the side here there's a little piece of text that shows you how many open issues there are. So I kind of scrolled down. I was looking for something like this, which is like first time. So a lot of projects somewhat recently have these like first time only, or like good first issue is another one.
I've seen those, yeah.
So kind of annoying, and you can see here the tag system. Like, so there's first time only. There's also like good first issue. There's also Hacktoberfest, which was like an event back in October that was so these were probably ones that were
things. Yeah.
These were probably like small things that were tagged. There was help wanted. You go to other page. There was issue hunt. So I started kind of opening some of these because I think those are probably a better place to start. But you can see there's a lot of stuff. So it probably hard. Up for grabs. This one, you're welcome to work on this issue. That's kind of a hard thing on some projects is not necessarily knowing like who's working on what and if it's okay to work on that. So I think this was the filter I ended up using that got us down to the issue that we're gonna look at today. So I went to this up for grabs one, which is like anyone can do this. So you kind of don't have to worry about if someone opened an issue and they're like, oh, I'm going to write a pull request for it. I don't know. It's like maybe kind of poor form to like, take that from them and do it if they were going to try to do that.
Right.
I don't know. So that's how I found this one.
Okay.
So
I also have geese in my backyard. So if you hear something that sounds like a squeaky toy, that's what's going on.
It's like a whole new level of rubber ducking.
Yeah.
So I found this issue. I read through it the other day, and it seems reasonably small. I think the other thing too is just maybe trying to set some expectations about what is reasonable. And we kind of blocked off a 2-hour chunk here to work on this, and I think it'd be like awesome if we could get through it, but I think that's pretty optimistic. So
okay,
that's just hard to like hard to know, I think. Like there was a RailsConf talk this week from Eileen Udicech about something that she added to Rails, and it was like, oh yeah, over the past 2 years, I merged like 56 pull requests to turn on this feature or something. And it was like, this is a significant effort. I think this one is much smaller. So
Yeah.
the kind of the long and the short in it is this user Deepest Blue here reported bug. So if you name your file something like this with these Unicode Tamil characters, so Jekyll is going to generate like a slug for the URL. So they're kind of converting weird characters to dashes and underscores and that type of thing. Yeah, very clear what the expected behavior is. They write that they expected it to be, this thing with a dash. I think I searched the other day what this was. It was like roasted coriander or something. It was kind of weird. Like
Sounds almost like a Heroku.
Like types of coriander. So
Interesting.
Who knows if this is working right? But
right.
So they expected basically this space here to get a dash so that it fits into this kind of slugified format. And then, what is actually happening is that there's a bunch of other dashes in the middle of it. So this is probably like way more detail than I would expect on just a generic issue that we pull up. But
yeah, this is pretty.
So,
I'm like, oh, if every issue is this good, I'd feel way more comfortable jumping into stuff. He's like, it's in this file. Look at this line of code right here is where it happens.
Yeah. So they highlight, in the utils file, there's a replace character sequence with hyphen and this big regular expression. They seem to, have a guess that the problem is that some kind of Unicode stuff doesn't match this alnum, which is probably alphanumeric. They found the exact one, so they've already kind of done some of the work that goes into sort of diagnosing what the bug could be. And then there's this other Stack Overflow question here that it was a good question because it sort of took it out of this context of like, I have this Jekyll site that's not doing this thing to like, I have this, string that is not matching this regular expression. There's a lot of stuff in here. I'll be honest, I don't know too much about the specifics of Unicode.
Unicode is such a rabbit hole. There's like you
like
peek open behind this curtain and you're like, there's a universe back here. Like let's shut it and not go into there.
Yeah. So once you're not dealing with necessarily Western English characters, there's a whole bunch of other stuff. Rabbit's hole, rat's nest, whatever, rabbit's nest, something like that goes into it. So I read through this as well when I was looking, and kind of got the sense that there's a couple of these things. There's different categories. They're not matching. The lead was kind of buried here, in that I didn't see. They said, okay, the recommendation I got on Stack Overflow was to use these categories. So the fix would be to change the regular expression to something like this. And I was a little bit confused because I didn't actually see that on the Stack Overflow, but it was like hidden in the comments here. So if I expand that out, then it's like, if you want to match any letter and diacritics, use this stuff to match one or more. So.
Yep. Yeah, it felt a little bit like tons of like great research. You're like, I'm with you, and then like, wait, what?
Yeah. So I didn't look up any of this, regular expression stuff. I'm guessing some of these are, this /p and then something like that is something to do the Unicode character. All this other stuff at the end are the kind of more standard symbols that we're expecting to get slugified out. So there we go. So that's, I think, very clear what is happening and potential fix and a potential place to start looking.
Yeah.
So I kept reading through the rest of this thread here. So the first thing I noticed is this user Ashwin, it looks like, is their name. So they're a member. So that comes up over here. So that kind of gave me a little bit more confidence that this is someone who sort of knows what's up in the project. So the fact that they're like applying in here,
like high level in the like they can like merge PRs and stuff or something like that, right? Like
yeah. Maybe the permissions are slightly different or whatever, or sometimes it's like contributor, sometimes it'll say like repository owner or whatever.
But they're like someone on Jekyll, like they.
Yeah, this person is at least sort of representing the org. So when in the discussion here, when they say like, yep, this seems like a bug, that's kind of, to me, is sort of confirmation that it is actually something that should be fixed and that the project would potentially be interested in
Gotcha.
receiving. So, this deepest blue person sounds like they're kind of just a user of Jekyll, not necessarily a developer. So they sort of step out, which, credit to them. Like, this is a great bug report. So I'm sure
Yeah,
I'm
if
sure they
everyone
probably could have fixed it.
Yeah, like if everyone's bug, like, hey, something went wrong. If they could do this, I feel like he's done this
90%
deepest
of the
blue
work.
user. Yeah, has done a
Yeah.
tremendous amount of the work.
Yep. So then there's this comment, which is good, which sort of lays out a couple constraints that we're going to have to work with today. So this can't be considered a bug fix because it will cause URL changes. So this has to be an opt-in feature. So this is basically saying like this is going to be sort of a breaking change. So it's not going to be just a small patch. Basically, the fix that the original author suggests is like replace this with the new version. And the Jekyll contributor here is saying like, yeah, we can do that, but if anybody had the old version and then they update, now their posts could potentially have different URLs, and then maybe it's now them coming in here reporting a bug that like it used to work like this and now it's not working. The interesting part here is that they highlighted that it should be an opt-in feature. So to me, that kind of signals that we'll probably need to add some like configuration flag or option, and that could be a whole another rabbit hole we have to go down, figuring out how options work. And then if I think ahead a little bit, it's like, well, if this goes through, then like that option will need to be documented. So we'll have to add that to the documentation site. So we'll see how far we get with that. But and then they also marked this as up for grabs. So if you're not comfortable fixing this, that's fine. They'll mark it. So this was in
kind of brings
January.
us full circle of that's where that flag came on that led you to
So
find it in the first place.
they tagged it that. This bot came in and marked it stale, which says no one has done anything with it in 2 months. So it will be closed unless something happens. And then sort of we kind of enter the picture here. So when we figured out we were going to work on this, I just came in here and just did a little hey wave, like we're going to try to work on this. So obviously not necessary, but it at least resets this stale timer. Yep. And let's the author and this other Ashwin know that we're at least looking at this, and if someone else comes along and they were saying, oh, it's Friday, I want to work on something, they would see that, oh, maybe someone else is already working on this, I'll go
or
else.
Maybe if someone had found, like the original reporter was like, oh, here's a bunch of other stuff that I just found related to this, like kind of
or
a quick pass.
I don't need this anymore, or never mind, this isn't going to work, or something.
Yeah,
so
that's brilliant.
We did get a little thumbs up from Ash there, so you can and cannot read anything into this emoji, but it seems like cool, like go for it.